In the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan, where death whispers through every canyon and survival depends on split-second decisions, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had already proven herself in ways that would make hardened warriors pause. But nothing in her extensive combat training had prepared her for the moment when 12 Navy SEALs would look to her as their only hope of making it home alive. The intel was supposed to be routine, a simple convoy escort through the Khyber province. What they didn't know was that they were driving straight into the most sophisticated ambush the Taliban had orchestrated in years. And what the enemy didn't know was that among the supposedly vulnerable supply, Convoy rode a woman whose marksmanship skills had earned her a reputation that stretched from Fort Bragg to Kandahar. When the first RPG screamed across the valley and the convoy ground to a halt under heavy fire, when the radio crackled with desperate voices calling for backup that was hours away, when the most elite soldiers in the world found themselves pinned down and outnumbered 5-1, that's when Maria Santos stepped out of the shadows with her M4 rifle and reminded everyone present why fear has no gender. This is the true story of Operation Silent Thunder, a classified mission that nearly ended in catastrophe until one soldier's extraordinary courage turned the tide of battle and saved the lives of America's finest warriors. The pre-dawn air at Forward Operating Base Chapman carried the familiar scent of diesel fuel, gun oil, and the acrid smoke from the burn pits that never seemed to stop smoldering. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted the straps of her plate carrier and checked her M4 carbine for the third time in 10 minutes. The weapon was an extension of herself now, after 4 deployments and countless firefights across Iraq and Afghanistan. Every scratch on its receiver told a story. Every modification had been earned through experience that came at the cost of blood and sleepless nights. At 28, Maria had already accomplished more in her military career than most soldiers achieved in 2 decades of service. Born in San Antonio to a family of immigrants who had clawed their way to the middle class through sheer determination, she had enlisted straight out of high school with dreams of serving her country and proving that a 5'4" woman from the wrong side of town could stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone wearing the uniform. The convoy preparation was methodical, almost ritualistic. 3 Humvees would escort 2 supply trucks through the Khyber province to deliver critical supplies to a remote outpost near the Pakistani border. The mission briefing had been straightforward, delivered by Lieutenant Colonel Harris in the cramped operations center while maps of the mountainous terrain glowed on multiple screens. Intelligence indicates minimal enemy activity along Route Falcon, Harris had said, pointing to the winding road that snaked through valleys where shadows fell like black curtains between towering peaks. Local tribal leaders have been cooperative, and we've had minimal contact in this sector for the past 6 weeks. Maria had listened carefully, but something in her gut twisted with unease. 6 weeks without contact in an area known for Taliban infiltration felt more like the calm before a storm than a sign of genuine peace. She had learned to trust her instincts over the years, especially after that night in Helmand Province when her squad had walked into what should have been a routine patrol and instead found themselves in a 3-hour firefight that left 2 soldiers wounded and earned Maria a Bronze Star for valor. The convoy commander was Navy SEAL Team 6 Chief Petty Officer Jake Morrison, a barrel-chested veteran with arms like tree trunks and a reputation for bringing his men home alive. Morrison had initially been skeptical about having an Army sergeant attached to his team, but Maria's service record had quickly silenced any doubts. Her marksmanship scores were legendary, ranking in the top 1% of all military personnel, and her combat experience in urban warfare and mountain operations made her an invaluable asset. "Santos, you'll be riding in the lead vehicle with Petty Officer Davis and me," Morrison had told her during the briefing. "Your job is to watch the high ground and keep us informed of any movement in the ridgelines. These mountains have more hiding spots than a Swiss cheese factory, and your eyes are the best we've got." As the convoy prepared to depart, Maria watched the other team members perform their pre-mission checks. These were the elite of the elite, men who had trained for years to reach the pinnacle of special operations. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Davis, the team's communications specialist, was calibrating his radio equipment with the precision of a surgeon. His hands moved with practiced efficiency across the dials and switches, establishing communications links with the forward operating base and confirming backup frequencies in case primary communications were compromised. Petty Officer Second Class Tommy Chun, the team's medic, was organizing his medical kit with the same attention to detail that a master chef might show while preparing for a crucial service. Every bandage, every syringe, every vial of morphine had its designated place, and Chun could locate any item blindfolded in the dark. His medical bag had saved more lives than most people would ever know, and his calm demeanor under fire had earned him the respect of every operator he had served with. The team's explosive ordnance disposal specialist, Petty Officer Second Class Ryan O'Brien, was inspecting his detection equipment while mentally reviewing the intelligence reports on improvised explosive devices in the area. O'Brien had defused more bombs than most people had seen in movies, and his steady hands and analytical mind had prevented countless casualties over multiple deployments. His Irish ancestry showed in his red hair and freckled complexion, but his serious demeanor reflected the gravity of his responsibilities. Petty Officer Third Class Alex Rodriguez, the team sniper, was making final adjustments to his rifle scope while studying satellite imagery of the route they would be traveling. Rodriguez could put a bullet through a quarter at 800 yards, and his ability to provide overwatch and eliminate threats from long range had saved his team on numerous occasions. His weapon was a work of art, customized and fine-tuned to perform with surgical precision in any weather condition. The remaining team members each brought specialized skills that complemented the overall mission capability. Petty Officer Second Class Kevin Walsh served as the team's intelligence analyst, capable of interpreting enemy movement patterns and predicting likely ambush locations based on terrain analysis and historical data. His photographic memory for details had prevented his team from walking into numerous traps over the years. Petty Officer Third Class Mike Thompson was the team's demolitions expert, responsible for breaching operations and handling any explosive devices they might encounter. Thompson's expertise with various types of explosives made him invaluable in both offensive and defensive operations, and his calm demeanor under pressure had earned him the nickname Steady Eddie among his teammates. As Maria conducted her final equipment check, she thought about the letter she had written to her younger sister, Isabella, the night before. Isabella was starting her sophomore year at the University of Texas, studying to become a nurse, and Maria had promised to be there for her graduation. The letter was sealed in an envelope marked, just in case, and locked in her footlocker, a tradition she had started during her first deployment. The morning sun was beginning to paint the eastern peaks with shades of gold and orange when Morrison gave the signal to mount up. The convoy vehicles had been inspected thoroughly, with mechanics checking everything from tire pressure to armor plating thickness. The Humvees were equipped with additional armor packages, run-flat tires, and upgraded suspension systems designed to handle the punishing mountain roads while providing protection against small arms fire and explosive devices. Maria climbed into the passenger seat of the lead Humvee, her M4 rifle positioned for quick access and her extra magazines arranged within easy reach. Davis settled into the driver's seat while Morrison took the commander's position in the turret, scanning the surrounding terrain through his binoculars and coordinating with the other vehicles through his headset. The supply trucks contained critical medical supplies, ammunition, and food rations destined for Outpost Viper, a small forward operating base that served as an observation post overlooking key infiltration routes used by enemy fighters moving between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The outpost had been resupplied by helicopter for the past month, but recent mechanical problems with the available aircraft had made ground transportation necessary. As the convoy pulled through the main gate of FOB Chapman, Maria felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that accompanied the beginning of any mission outside the wire. The base perimeter fell behind them as they entered the unforgiving landscape of the Kunar province, where every rock formation could hide a sniper and every curve in the road might conceal an improvised explosive device. The first hour of the journey passed without incident as the convoy navigated the relatively well-maintained section of Route Falcon that ran through the valley floor. The road surface was packed dirt and gravel, rutted from years of military and civilian traffic, but stable enough to maintain a steady pace of 30 miles per hour. Morrison maintained constant communication with each vehicle, receiving situation reports every 10 minutes and coordinating with aerial reconnaissance assets that were providing overwatch from high altitude. The unmanned aerial vehicles could detect movement and potential threats from miles away, but the mountainous terrain created numerous blind spots where enemy fighters could remain hidden until the last possible moment. Maria scanned the ridgelines through her rifle scope, looking for any sign of movement or reflection that might indicate enemy observation posts. The mountains rose on both sides of the valley like the walls of a massive cathedral, their peaks disappearing into wisps of cloud that drifted across the brilliant blue sky. The beauty of the landscape was undeniable, but Maria had learned to see it through the lens of tactical necessity rather than aesthetic appreciation. "Contact front, possible vehicle ahead," Davis reported as they rounded a curve and spotted what appeared to be a disabled truck approximately half a mile up the road. The vehicle was positioned at an angle that partially blocked the roadway, forcing any traffic to slow down and navigate around it. Morrison raised his binoculars and studied the abandoned vehicle carefully. Standard operating procedure required them to treat any unexpected obstruction as a potential threat, and the placement of this particular truck raised immediate red flags. It was positioned in a natural choke point where the road narrowed between a steep embankment and a rocky outcropping, creating an ideal location for an ambush. "All vehicles halt," Morrison commanded over the radio net. "Rodriguez, can you get eyes on that truck from your position?" Rodriguez, positioned in the third vehicle with his sniper rifle, immediately began scanning the abandoned vehicle and surrounding terrain through his high-powered scope. After several minutes of careful observation, he reported back with his assessment. "Vehicle appears to be a civilian cargo truck, possibly abandoned due to mechanical failure. I don't see any obvious signs of tampering or explosive devices, but I can't get a clear view of the undercarriage from this angle. Recommend dismounted reconnaissance before proceeding." Morrison weighed his options carefully. Standard procedure called for explosive ordnance disposal personnel to investigate any suspicious vehicle before the convoy proceeded, but that would require valuable time and might alert any enemy observers to their presence. On the other hand, attempting to bypass the obstacle without proper reconnaissance could result in the convoy driving directly into a prepared ambush. "O'Brien, you're up," Morrison decided. "Take Chun with you for security and give me a full assessment of that truck. Everyone else maintain overwatch and stay alert for any movement in the surrounding terrain." O'Brien and Chun dismounted from their vehicle and began a careful approach toward the abandoned truck, moving in a tactical formation that provided mutual support while minimizing their exposure to potential threats. O'Brien carried his electronic detection equipment, while Chun provided security with his carbine at the ready. Maria continued scanning the ridgelines, but something felt different about the landscape ahead. The absence of local civilians was noteworthy, since this road typically saw regular traffic for villages on both sides of the valley. Birds that should have been active in the mid-morning sun were conspicuously absent, and even the wind seemed to have died down to an unnatural stillness. "Morrison, something doesn't feel right about this," Maria said quietly, not wanting to alarm the rest of the team, but trusting her instincts enough to voice her concerns. "This whole valley feels empty in a way that makes my skin crawl." Morrison nodded grimly, his own combat experience telling him the same thing. He had learned over multiple deployments that sometimes the absence of normal activity was more significant than obvious signs of enemy presence. The Taliban had become masters of creating killing zones that appeared completely normal until the moment they unleashed their attacks. O'Brien's voice crackled over the radio as he completed his examination of the abandoned truck. "Vehicle appears to be genuinely disabled, probably transmission failure based on the fluid leak pattern." No signs of explosive devices or tampering. Road is clear to proceed, but recommend we stay sharp. As the convoy prepared to resume movement, Maria noticed a glint of reflected sunlight from a ridgeline approximately 800 meters to their northeast. The reflection was brief, lasting less than a second, but her trained eye caught it immediately. It could have been a piece of metal debris or a fragment of glass, but it could also have been sunlight reflecting off a rifle scope or binoculars. Possible observation post, northeast ridgeline, approximately 800 meters, she reported calmly, marking the location with her laser designator so the other team members could locate the potential threat. Rodriguez immediately swung his rifle toward the indicated location and began a systematic scan of the area through his scope. After several minutes of careful observation, he reported that he could not confirm any enemy presence, but acknowledged that the terrain provided numerous positions where observers could remain concealed. The convoy resumed movement, navigating carefully around the abandoned truck and continuing along Route Falcon toward their destination. The road began to climb gradually as it wound deeper into the mountains, and the valley walls became steeper and more imposing with each mile they traveled. Maria's unease continued to grow as they progressed through the increasingly desolate landscape. Her combat experience had taught her to recognize the subtle signs that preceded enemy contact, and every instinct she possessed was screaming warnings that something was terribly wrong. The mountains ahead seemed to loom over them like sentinels, and she could not shake the feeling that they were being watched by eyes that meant them harm. As they approached the halfway point of their journey, Morrison received a radio transmission from their aerial reconnaissance assets that would change everything about their mission. The unmanned aerial vehicle providing overwatch had detected movement in multiple locations ahead of their route, indicating the presence of numerous individuals in positions that suggested a coordinated enemy operation. The trap was being set, and the convoy was driving directly toward it. The radio transmission from the unmanned aerial vehicle sent ice through Morrison's veins. Aerial reconnaissance had identified approximately 30 to 40 individuals moving into positions along the ridgelines on both sides of the valley, approximately 2 kilometers ahead of the convoy's current position. The enemy fighters were establishing what appeared to be a coordinated ambush zone, complete with multiple firing positions and probable escape routes. All vehicles halt immediately, Morrison commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had survived countless combat operations through careful decision-making and tactical awareness. The convoy came to an immediate stop on a relatively straight section of road that offered limited cover, but provided good visibility in all directions. Maria's heart rate increased as she processed the tactical situation developing around them. They were in a valley with steep sides, limited maneuver room, and an unknown number of enemy fighters establishing positions ahead of their route. Behind them lay the road they had just traveled, but reversing course would mean crossing terrain that could have been seeded with improvised explosive devices during the night. Morrison was already coordinating with higher headquarters, requesting immediate close air support and updating their current position for potential extraction operations. However, the nearest attack helicopters were engaged in supporting another operation 50 kilometers to the south, and fixed-wing aircraft would require at least 45 minutes to reach their location. "We're on our own for the next hour," Morrison announced to his team after completing his communications with the Tactical Operations Center. Enemy strength estimated at 30 to 40 fighters, positions unknown, but assumed to be in prepared defensive positions along our route of advance. Rodriguez was scanning the terrain ahead through his sniper scope, looking for any visual confirmation of enemy positions or movement. The mountainous terrain provided countless hiding spots where fighters could remain concealed until the moment they chose to reveal themselves, making target acquisition extremely difficult. "I'm not seeing any obvious positions yet," Rodriguez reported, "but these mountains have more caves and crevices than a Swiss cheese factory. They could have half the Taliban up there, and we wouldn't know it until they started shooting." Davis was monitoring multiple radio frequencies, trying to gather additional intelligence about enemy movements in the area, while maintaining communications with their base and any other coalition forces that might be operating in the vicinity. The radio chatter indicated heightened enemy activity throughout the province, suggesting that the ambush they were facing might be part of a larger coordinated operation. Maria was studying the terrain with the analytical mind that had made her such an effective soldier. The valley ahead narrowed significantly, creating natural choke points where the convoy would be forced to slow down and present excellent targets for enemy fighters positioned on the high ground. The road itself showed signs of recent disturbance in several locations, suggesting possible placement of improvised explosive devices. "Chief, I'm seeing fresh dirt across the road about 600 meters ahead," she reported to Morrison. "Multiple locations where the surface has been disturbed recently. Could be natural erosion, but the pattern looks deliberate." Morrison raised his binoculars and confirmed Maria's observation. The disturbed earth was visible as slightly different coloration against the packed dirt and gravel surface of the road, and the pattern did indeed suggest human activity rather than natural weathering. O'Brien was already preparing his electronic detection equipment to sweep for explosive devices, but the tactical situation was becoming increasingly complicated. Dismounting personnel to conduct a thorough sweep would expose them to sniper fire from the ridgelines, while attempting to proceed without clearing potential explosive devices could result in catastrophic vehicle damage and casualties. "We need to make a decision quickly," Morrison said grimly. "Every minute we stay here gives them more time to get into position and coordinate their attack. But rushing forward without proper reconnaissance could get us all killed." The team's intelligence analyst, Walsh, was studying his digital maps and correlating enemy movement patterns with historical data from previous operations in the area. His analysis indicated that the current enemy positioning was consistent with tactics used in several previous ambushes, suggesting that they were facing experienced fighters who had planned this operation carefully. "Based on historical patterns, they'll probably let us get deep into the kill zone before initiating contact," Walsh reported. "They want to maximize casualties and minimize our ability to maneuver or withdraw. Once they open fire, we'll have maybe 30 seconds before they bring everything they've down on us." The sound of helicopter rotors echoing off the valley walls brought momentary hope, but Morrison's radio quickly dashed their expectations. The aircraft was a medical evacuation helicopter responding to a separate incident 20 kilometers away, and no combat assets were immediately available to provide support. Chen was checking his medical supplies and mentally preparing for the inevitable casualties that would result from contact with such a large enemy force. His experience in previous firefights had taught him that preparation before the shooting started could mean the difference between saving lives and losing teammates. Thompson was organizing his demolitions equipment, considering what tools might be needed to create escape routes through terrain that appeared to offer limited options for tactical movement. His expertise with various types of explosives could potentially create diversions or clear obstacles, but the rocky terrain would limit the effectiveness of many standard techniques. Maria continued scanning the ridgelines, using her exceptional marksmanship training to identify potential sniper positions and firing lanes that enemy fighters might use. Her ability to think like a sniper allowed her to anticipate where threats might emerge and prepare countermeasures before contact was initiated. Movement on the western ridgeline, approximately 1,000 meters ahead, she reported, marking the location with her laser designator. Brief visual contact with what appeared to be two individuals moving between rock formations. Rodriguez immediately focused his scope on the indicated area and confirmed the sighting. "I've got eyes on them. Two military-age males with what appears to be weapons, moving in a tactical formation toward prepared positions. They know we're here." The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly as more enemy movement was detected on both sides of the valley. The ambush was clearly well-planned and coordinated, with fighters moving into positions that would provide overlapping fields of fire and multiple angles of attack against the convoy. Morrison made the decision that would define the next several hours of their lives. "We're going to push through," he announced. Staying here just gives them more time to organize, and we don't have a luxury of waiting for air support. Speed and aggression are our best options right now. The convoy began moving forward again, but this time with weapons ready and every team member prepared for immediate contact. Maria chambered around in her M4 and adjusted her plate carrier to ensure optimal mobility while maintaining protection against small arms fire. The first kilometer of their advance passed with agonizing tension as every team member scanned for threats while the vehicles navigated the increasingly treacherous terrain. The road surface became rougher as they climbed higher into the mountains, and several locations showed clear signs of recent disturbance that suggested hidden explosive devices. IED left side, 50 meters ahead, O'Brien called out as his detection equipment identified a suspicious anomaly in the roadway. The convoy halted while he conducted a dismounted investigation, working quickly to minimize their exposure time while ensuring thorough evaluation of the potential threat. The device was cleverly concealed beneath what appeared to be natural rockfall, but O'Brien's trained eye immediately recognized the telltale signs of human placement. The explosive device was sophisticated, indicating the work of experienced bomb makers with access to quality materials and technical expertise. Confirmed IED, probably 10 to 15 pounds of homemade explosive, O'Brien reported after completing his examination. I can disarm it, but it's going to take at least 20 minutes, and we'll be sitting ducks the whole time. Morrison weighed their options while monitoring radio traffic that indicated enemy movement continuing on both sides of their position. Time was working against them, and remaining stationary for an extended period would allow the enemy fighters to complete their preparations and coordinate their attack. Negative on the disarmament, Morrison decided. Mark the location, and we'll navigate around it. Everyone stay sharp and watch for secondary devices. The convoy carefully maneuvered around the explosive device, using the full width of the road and extending into the rocky shoulder to maintain safe distance from the suspected blast zone. As they completed the bypass maneuver, Maria noticed additional movement on the eastern ridgeline. Multiple contacts, eastern ridge, approximately 800 meters, she reported. I count at least 6 individuals moving into what appear to be prepared fighting positions. The enemy was revealing themselves more openly now, suggesting that the ambush was nearly ready to be triggered. Rodriguez was tracking multiple targets through his scope, but the range and terrain made effective engagement difficult without revealing their own position and capabilities. They're getting bold, Rodriguez observed. Either they're supremely confident in their plan, or they're trying to provoke us into revealing our positions before they're ready to initiate contact. The next section of road required the convoy to negotiate a series of switchbacks as the route climbed higher into the mountains. Each turn presented a new potential ambush site, and the team's tension increased with every curve they navigated. As they rounded a particularly sharp turn, Davis spotted something that made his blood run cold. Wire across the road, 200 meters ahead. Looks like a command-detonated device. The wire was barely visible against the dark asphalt, but its presence confirmed that the enemy had prepared the kill zone extensively. Command-detonated devices required someone to physically trigger the explosion, meaning that enemy fighters were positioned close enough to observe the convoy and time their attack perfectly. Morrison immediately ordered another halt while the team assessed this new threat. The wire could be connected to multiple explosive devices positioned throughout the area, creating a complex network of booby traps designed to channel the convoy into predetermined killing zones. This is getting worse by the minute, Morrison muttered as he studied the tactical situation through his binoculars. They've had time to prepare this area extensively, and we're walking into exactly what they want. The sound of rifle bolts being charged echoed from the surrounding ridgelines, a psychological warfare tactic designed to increase tension and demonstrate that the convoy was surrounded by hostile forces. The enemy was announcing their presence and superior positioning while maintaining the initiative to choose when and how the battle would begin. Maria's training and experience told her that they were approaching the moment of truth. The enemy had invested significant time and resources in preparing this ambush, and they would not allow the convoy to withdraw without a fight. The next few minutes would determine whether they would complete their mission or become casualties in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan. As Morrison prepared to give the order to advance into what was clearly a sophisticated kill zone, the first shot rang out across the valley, shattering the tense silence and beginning what would become one of the most intense firefights any of them had ever experienced. The sniper's bullet struck the armored windshield of the lead vehicle with a metallic crack that reverberated through the cabin like thunder. The ballistic glass held, spider-webbing outward from the impact point, but the message was unmistakably clear. The convoy was now officially in a fight for their lives. "Contact left! Contact left!" Morrison's voice boomed over the radio as he swiveled the mounted machine gun toward the muzzle flash he had spotted on the western ridgeline. The weapon's heavy-caliber rounds began chewing into the rocky outcropping where the enemy sniper had fired from, sending fragments of stone and dust cascading down the mountainside. Maria's training took over instantly, her body moving with practiced efficiency as she rolled down her window and brought her M4 to bear on the ridgeline. Her scope revealed multiple enemy fighters emerging from concealed positions, their weapons glinting in the afternoon sun as they prepared to unleash devastating firepower on the trapped convoy. Multiple shooters, Western Ridge, elevation approximately 300 feet above our position, she reported calmly, even as bullets began impacting around their vehicle. Her voice remained steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system, a testament to years of training and combat experience that had prepared her for moments exactly like this. Davis yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, seeking whatever limited cover the terrain might provide while maintaining the vehicle's mobility. The Humvee's armor protection could withstand small arms fire, but concentrated fire from multiple positions would eventually find weak points in their defenses. The other vehicles in the convoy were already maneuvering to establish defensive positions while returning fire at the enemy positions. The SEAL team's training was evident in their immediate response, with each vehicle crew working together to create overlapping fields of fire and mutual support. Rodriguez had identified the enemy sniper's position and was tracking the target through his scope, waiting for a clear shot opportunity. His rifle was capable of reaching out and touching someone at distances that would make most marksmen dizzy, but the enemy fighter was using the rocky terrain expertly to limit his exposure. "I've got eyes on the sniper," Rodriguez reported over the radio. "He's good, using natural cover and only exposing himself for seconds at a time. Give me a distraction and I can take him." The request came at the perfect moment as Thompson spotted an opportunity to use his demolitions expertise. A rocky outcropping approximately 50 meters ahead of their position could provide better cover for the convoy, while simultaneously creating a distraction that might give Rodriguez the shot opportunity he needed. "Stand by for explosive distraction," Thompson announced as he prepared a precisely calculated charge designed to bring down part of the rock formation without endangering the convoy vehicles. His hands moved with practiced precision despite the bullets whining overhead, years of training allowing him to focus on the technical requirements of his task while chaos erupted around him. The explosion sent a massive cloud of dust and debris into the air, temporarily obscuring visibility across the valley while providing Rodriguez with the distraction he needed. His rifle cracked once, the sound sharp and distinct even among the growing intensity of the firefight, and the enemy sniper's position fell silent. "Target down," Rodriguez reported with professional satisfaction. "But we've got bigger problems developing on the eastern ridge." Maria swung her attention to the eastern side of the valley and immediately understood Rodriguez's concern. A large group of enemy fighters was moving into position with what appeared to be heavy weapons, including rocket-propelled grenades and at least one machine gun that could pose a serious threat to their vehicles. "RPG team, Eastern Ridge, approximately 600 meters," she called out while adjusting her rifle scope for the increased range. The enemy fighters were still setting up their position, providing a narrow window of opportunity to disrupt their preparations before they could bring their heavy weapons to bear. Morrison was coordinating the team's response while maintaining suppressive fire on multiple enemy positions. His experience in countless firefights had taught him the importance of maintaining initiative and preventing the enemy from executing their planned attack sequence. Chun, Walsh establish Overwatch position behind that boulder cluster and provide covering fire for the supply trucks, Morrison commanded. O'Brien, Thompson, I need you to clear us a path through that wire obstacle so we can get these vehicles moving again. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly as more enemy positions revealed themselves along both sides of the valley. The ambush had clearly been planned by someone with extensive military experience, as the enemy fighters were using sophisticated tactics that maximized their advantages while minimizing the convoy's ability to respond effectively. Chun and Walsh moved with professional competence to establish their Overwatch position, their weapons already engaging targets of opportunity as they provided suppressive fire for the rest of the team. Chin's medical training made him acutely aware of how quickly the tactical situation could result in serious casualties if they remained pinned down in the kill zone. O'Brien and Thompson worked together to address the wire obstacle that was preventing the convoy from advancing or withdrawing from their current position. The wire was connected to multiple explosive devices positioned throughout the immediate area, requiring careful analysis to avoid triggering secondary explosions that could disable their vehicles. Wire is connected to at least 3 separate devices, O'Brien reported after completing his initial assessment. I can cut it safely, but we need suppressive fire on that ridge position to keep the triggerman from detonating manually. Maria had identified the likely position of the enemy fighter responsible for controlling the command-detonated devices. A small cave opening approximately 400 meters up the eastern ridge provided perfect concealment and clear observation of the convoy's position. Probable triggerman position, eastern ridge, cave opening at 400 meters, she reported while adjusting her scope's elevation to compensate for the upward angle of the shot. I can engage, but I'll need covering fire to keep his friends busy. The team's coordination was flawless as Rodriguez and Morrison provided suppressive fire on surrounding enemy positions while Maria lined up her shot on the cave opening. Her breathing slowed as she entered the focused mental state that had made her such an exceptional marksman, filtering out the chaos of the firefight to concentrate solely on the precise placement of her bullet. Her rifle cracked, and the cave position immediately fell silent, but the victory was short-lived as enemy reinforcements began arriving from positions deeper in the mountains. The Taliban had clearly committed significant resources to this operation, and they were prepared to sustain the fight for as long as necessary to achieve their objectives. Movement on both ridges, Walsh reported from his Overwatch position. Looks like they're bringing in additional fighters from reserve positions. I count at least 20 new contacts moving into the area. The sound of approaching helicopters brought momentary hope, but Morrison's radio quickly clarified that the aircraft were still 20 minutes away and would need time to assess the tactical situation before they could provide effective close air support. O'Brien had successfully disabled the wire obstacle, clearing the path for vehicle movement, but the convoy was still trapped in a natural killing zone with limited options for tactical maneuver. The enemy's superior positioning and numerical advantage were becoming more apparent with each passing minute. We need to move now, before they get those heavy weapons into position, Morrison decided. All vehicles prepare to bound forward to that rock formation at 200 meters. Maria, I need precise fire on that RPG team to keep them from engaging us during movement. The convoy's next few minutes would be critical as they attempted to fight their way out of the ambush zone while under fire from multiple directions. Maria understood that her marksmanship skills would be essential to their survival, as accurate fire could neutralize key threats and provide the suppressive effect needed for successful movement. As the first vehicle began its bound forward, the enemy fighters unleashed a devastating volume of fire that turned the valley into a hell of flying lead and exploding ordnance. The battle for survival had truly begun, and Every decision made in the next few minutes would determine whether the convoy would fight its way to safety or become casualties in the unforgiving mountains of Afghanistan. The rocket-propelled grenade screamed across the valley like a comet, its warhead leaving a trail of smoke as it arced toward the lead Humvee. Davis threw the steering wheel hard left while Maria tracked the RPG team through her scope, her finger already applying pressure to the trigger as she prepared to eliminate the threat before they could reload. Her shot was perfect, striking the RPG gunner's center mass and sending the weapon tumbling down the rocky slope. But even as that threat was neutralized, two more enemy positions opened fire with automatic weapons, forcing the convoy to seek cover behind whatever terrain features were available. The firefight was entering its most dangerous phase, with both sides fully committed to the battle and no possibility of disengagement until one force achieved decisive advantage over the other. For the SEAL team and Maria Santos, that advantage would have to be created through superior training, tactical excellence, and the kind of courage that could only be forged in the crucible of combat. As bullets continued to crack overhead and enemy fighters maneuvered for better firing positions, Maria realized that they were facing the fight of their lives against an enemy that was well-prepared, well-positioned, and absolutely determined to destroy them. The next phase of the battle would test every skill they possessed and every lesson they had learned in their military careers. The convoy was surrounded, outnumbered, and fighting for survival in terrain that favored their enemies. But they had one advantage that no amount of planning or preparation could overcome. They were professional warriors who had trained their entire careers for moments exactly like this, and they would not go down without a fight that their enemies would never forget. The tactical situation reached a critical breaking point when Morrison's voice crackled over the radio with words that sent ice through every team member's veins. "I'm hit." Taking command, Santos is now convoy commander. A sniper's bullet had found its mark through a gap in Morrison's body armor, the impact spinning him around in the turret and sending him crashing into the vehicle's interior. Chin was already moving to provide medical attention, but the team's leadership structure had just been shattered at the worst possible moment. Maria Santos felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. 12 of the military's most elite warriors were now looking to her for the tactical decisions that would determine whether they lived or died in this godforsaken valley. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but her voice remained steady as she keyed her radio microphone. "All call signs, this is Santos. I have command of the convoy. Morrison is wounded but stable. We're going to fight our way out of this kill zone, and every one of you is going home alive today. Acknowledge." The responses came back immediately, each SEAL confirming his understanding and readiness to follow her leadership despite the desperate nature of their situation. These men had worked with her long enough to know that her marksmanship skills and tactical awareness made her qualified to lead them, but the pressure of command in such circumstances was unlike anything she had ever experienced. "Rodriguez, I need accurate counts on enemy positions and weapons capabilities," Maria commanded while simultaneously engaging targets with her M4. "Walsh, establish communications with higher headquarters and update them on our situation. We need close air support, and we need it now." The enemy fighters had identified Morrison as a key leader and were now concentrating their fire on the lead vehicle, attempting to eliminate the convoy's command and control capabilities. Bullets were striking the Humvee's armor with increasing frequency, and Maria knew they had to move soon or risk being completely pinned down. "Enemy count approximately 40 fighters," Rodriguez reported while engaging targets at long range with his sniper rifle. "I've identified 3 machine gun positions, at least 2 RPG teams, and multiple riflemen in prepared positions. They've got us in a perfect crossfire, and they're trying to keep us in this kill zone until reinforcements arrive." Davis was fighting to keep the lead vehicle operational as enemy fire concentrated on their position. The engine was running rough from bullet impacts, and several warning lights were illuminating on the dashboard, indicating potential mechanical problems that could leave them stranded. "Vehicle's taking a beating," Davis reported grimly. "Engine's running hot, and we've lost power steering." I can keep her moving for now, but we need to get out of this fire zone before something critical gets hit. Maria's mind raced through tactical options while she continued to engage enemy targets. The convoy was trapped in a natural amphitheater with limited escape routes, and the enemy had positioned themselves to cover all possible avenues of movement. Traditional tactics called for suppressive fire and tactical movement, but their situation required something more aggressive. Thompson, Chun, I need you to create a diversion on the eastern ridge, Maria commanded. Use everything you've got to make them think we're trying to break out in that direction. Rodriguez, Walsh, you're with me on a flanking movement to the west. We're going to eliminate those machine gun positions and create an exit route. The plan was audacious and dangerous, requiring precise coordination while under heavy fire. But Maria's tactical assessment indicated that aggressive action was their only hope of breaking free from the ambush before enemy reinforcements arrived to seal their fate. O'Brien was monitoring his electronic detection equipment while engaging enemy fighters with his carbine. The sophistication of the enemy's preparations was becoming more apparent as he identified additional explosive devices positioned to prevent the convoy from using natural cover effectively. Multiple secondary IEDs positioned throughout our defensive perimeter, O'Brien reported. They've planned this operation extensively, and they're trying to channel our movement into predetermined kill zones. Recommend we avoid the obvious covered positions. Maria acknowledged the intelligence while formulating her flanking maneuver. The western ridge offered better concealment and fewer enemy positions, but reaching it would require crossing approximately 200 meters of open ground while under fire from multiple directions. Execute diversion in 30 seconds, Maria commanded as she prepared for the most dangerous movement of her military career. Rodriguez, you're responsible for suppressive fire on the northern positions. Walsh, cover the southern approach. I'm going after those machine guns. The diversion began with Thompson's explosives creating multiple secondary explosions along the eastern ridge, drawing enemy attention and return fire away from Maria's intended route. The cacophony of gunfire and explosions created enough confusion to mask the sound of her movement as she sprinted toward the western slope. Enemy bullets cracked past her head as she bounded from one piece of cover to the next, her combat gear weighing her down, but her determination driving her forward. Each stride brought her closer to the enemy machine gun position that was pouring devastating fire into her team's defensive positions. Rodriguez's sniper rifle was working overtime, eliminating enemy fighters who tried to engage Maria during her movement. His precision shooting created brief windows of opportunity that allowed her to advance while maintaining suppressive fire on threats throughout the area. Santos is in position, Maria reported breathlessly as she reached a rocky outcropping that provided concealment approximately 50 meters from the nearest machine gun nest. Beginning assault on western positions. Maintain suppressive fire and be ready to move on my command. The machine gun position was expertly camouflaged among the natural rock formations, but Maria's tactical eye identified the firing lane and probable crew positions. 2 enemy fighters were operating the weapon, while a third provided security with an assault rifle. Maria's assault on the position was swift and decisive. Her M4 carbine spoke 3 times in rapid succession, each shot precisely placed to eliminate the enemy fighters before they could respond to her presence. The machine gun fell silent, removing a significant threat to the convoy's survival. Western machine gun neutralized, Maria reported while already moving toward the second position. Rodriguez, shift fire to the remaining northern positions. I'm continuing the assault. The second machine gun position was approximately 100 meters further up the ridge, positioned to provide overlapping fire with the first gun and cover the convoy's most likely escape routes. The enemy fighters had heard the gunfire from the first position and were now alert to the threat approaching from their flank. Maria's approach to the second position required crossing a section of open ground where she would be exposed to fire from multiple directions. Her success depended on speed, surprise, and the suppressive fire being provided by her teammates below. The sprint across the exposed terrain was the longest 30 seconds of her life. Bullets whined past her ears and kicked up dirt around her feet as enemy fighters tried to track her movement. Her body armor absorbed at least 2 impacts that would have been fatal wounds, but she maintained her momentum toward the objective. The assault on the second machine gun position was more complex, as the enemy fighters had positioned themselves in a natural bunker formed by fallen boulders. Maria used a fragmentation grenade to clear the position, the explosion echoing across the valley and temporarily stunning nearby enemy fighters. Second Western position neutralized, Maria reported as she began moving toward the third and final machine gun that was preventing the convoy's escape. All vehicles prepare to move on my command. We're going to punch through their lines and get the hell out of here. The third machine gun position was the most challenging target, positioned on higher ground with excellent fields of fire and multiple escape routes for the crew. The enemy fighters had learned from the fate of their comrades and were prepared for her approach. Maria's final assault required everything she had learned in her military career. She used terrain masking to approach undetected, coordinated with Rodriguez's sniper fire to eliminate security personnel, and closed with the machine gun crew before they could bring their weapon to bear on her position. The firefight at close range was brief, but intense, with Maria's superior training and equipment giving her the decisive advantage she needed. When the shooting stopped, the last machine gun position was silent, and the convoy's escape route was clear. All positions neutralized, Maria announced triumphantly. All vehicles move now. Follow Route Alpha to the extraction point. We're going home. The convoy's movement out of the kill zone was swift and coordinated, with each vehicle providing covering fire for the others while maintaining tactical formation. The enemy's carefully planned ambush had been broken by one soldier's extraordinary courage and tactical skill. As they cleared the immediate danger area, Rodriguez's voice came over the radio with an observation that would become part of military legend. Santos just took out 3 machine gun positions single-handedly while under fire from 40 enemy fighters. That's the most badass thing I've ever seen in my entire career. Maria's response was characteristically modest. I just did my job. Now, let's get Morrison to a medical facility and finish this mission. The convoy continued toward their destination, but everyone aboard knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. A single soldier had turned the tide of a desperate battle through exceptional courage, tactical skill, and the kind of determination that defined the very best of America's military personnel. Behind them, the valley fell silent except for the distant sound of approaching helicopters bringing reinforcements that were no longer needed. The ambush had failed, the convoy was intact, and Maria Santos had proven that heroism knows no gender when lives are on the line, and courage is required. The legend of the soldier who saved the SEALs had begun, though Maria herself would never speak of it as anything more than doing her duty under extraordinary circumstances. For her, the true victory was that every member of her team was going home alive, and that was worth more than any medal or recognition she might receive. The convoy reached Outpost Viper 3 hours behind schedule, but every vehicle was operational and every team member was alive. Morrison had been stabilized by Chen's expert medical care during the journey, and his wound, while serious, would not be life-threatening with proper treatment at a military medical facility. As the vehicles passed through the outpost perimeter, word of their firefight had already spread throughout the small base. Soldiers emerged from bunkers and buildings to witness the arrival of the convoy that had fought its way through a major Taliban ambush and lived to tell the story. Major Catherine Williams, the outpost commander, met them at the vehicle dismount point with a mixture of relief and amazement. Intelligence reports had indicated the convoy was overdue and possibly under enemy contact, but the details of their ordeal were still emerging through fragmentary radio transmissions. Santos, I need a full debrief on what happened out there, Major Williams said as Maria climbed down from the lead Humvee. Initial reports suggest you engaged a significant enemy force and came out on top. Maria's uniform was torn and dirty her face streaked with dust and cordite residue. But her bearing remained professional as she prepared to provide her report. The responsibility of command during the firefight had changed something fundamental about her perspective on leadership and her role as a soldier. "Ma'am, we encountered a coordinated ambush involving approximately 40 enemy fighters positioned along both sides of Route Falcon," Maria began, her voice steady despite the exhaustion that was beginning to set in now that the immediate danger had passed. "Chief Morrison was wounded during the initial contact, and I assumed command of the convoy. The medical evacuation helicopter was already en route to transport Morrison to a larger medical facility where surgeons could address his wounds properly. Chun had done excellent work stabilizing him in the field, but definitive care required capabilities that were not available at the remote outpost. Rodriguez was helping Morrison prepare for medical evacuation, his professional demeanor masking the concern he felt for his team leader. Morrison remained conscious and alert despite his injuries, and his first priority was ensuring that his team received proper recognition for their actions during the firefight. "Santos saved all our lives," Morrison told Major Williams through gritted teeth as the medical personnel prepared him for transport. "She took command under fire and executed a single-handed assault that broke a Taliban ambush. I've never seen anything like in 15 years of special operations." The other team members were conducting post-mission equipment checks and maintenance while processing the events of the day. Each man had witnessed Maria's extraordinary courage during the firefight, and they knew they had been part of something that would be remembered long after their deployments ended. Davis was reporting on the mechanical condition of the convoy vehicles, noting multiple bullet impacts and minor mechanical problems that would require attention before the vehicles could be considered fully operational again. The fact that all vehicles had remained functional throughout the firefight was a testament to their armored protection and the skill of the drivers. Lead vehicles sustained 17 bullet impacts, damage to the power steering system, and engine overheating issues, Davis reported. "But she got us home, and that's what matters. Santos kept us moving when stopping would have meant getting overrun." O'Brien was documenting the explosive devices they had encountered during the mission, providing intelligence that would help future operations understand the enemy's capabilities and tactics. The sophistication of the ambush suggested that experienced fighters had spent considerable time preparing the kill zone. Enemy demonstrated advanced knowledge of tactics and terrain, O'Brien reported in his written assessment. Multiple IEDs, coordinated positioning, and command-detonated devices indicate this was planned by someone with military experience. Santos's aggressive response disrupted their execution and prevented them from achieving their objectives. Thompson was already analyzing the tactical lessons learned from the firefight, recognizing that Maria's unconventional approach had succeeded where traditional tactics might have failed. Her willingness to take extraordinary risks had created opportunities that standard operating procedures would not have provided. Conventional wisdom says you don't conduct single-person assaults against prepared positions, Thompson observed to Rodriguez as they cleaned their weapons. But Santos proved that sometimes you have to break the rules to save lives. That flanking maneuver was the gutsiest thing I've ever seen. Chun was completing his medical report on Morrison's injuries, while reflecting on how close they had come to much more serious casualties. The enemy's coordination and firepower could easily have resulted in multiple deaths if not for Maria's tactical leadership and exceptional marksmanship. "Morrison's going to make a full recovery," Chun reported to the team. "But if we had stayed pinned down in that kill zone for another 10 minutes, the outcome could have been very different. Santos's assault gave us the break we needed to extract successfully." Walsh was already preparing the intelligence report that would be forwarded to higher headquarters, documenting the enemy's tactics and capabilities for analysis by military intelligence personnel. The information gathered during the firefight would help other units operating in the area understand and counter similar threats. "Enemy demonstrated sophisticated planning and coordination," Walsh wrote in his preliminary report. "However, Their execution was disrupted by aggressive counter-assault tactics that prevented them from achieving tactical surprise and overwhelming firepower advantage. The resupply mission that had brought them to Outpost Viper was completed efficiently, with the critical supplies being unloaded and distributed to the soldiers who had been waiting for weeks for fresh rations, medical supplies, and ammunition. The successful delivery validated the risks taken during the convoy operation. Major Williams was already coordinating with higher headquarters regarding recognition for the convoy team's actions during the ambush. Maria's leadership and heroism during the firefight clearly warranted significant military awards, but the formal process would require detailed investigation and witness statements. "I'm recommending you for the Silver Star," Major Williams told Maria privately after reviewing the preliminary reports from the team members. "What you did out there goes beyond the call of duty, and your actions saved the lives of some of our most valuable personnel." Maria's response reflected the humility that had characterized her entire military career. "Ma'am, I was just doing my job. Any soldier in that situation would have done the same thing. The real heroes are the guys who provided covering fire and trusted me to lead them out of there." The helicopter carrying Morrison to medical treatment lifted off from the outpost's landing zone as the sun began to set behind the western mountains. The sound of the rotors fading into the distance marked the end of one of the most significant firefights any of them had experienced during their deployments. Rodriguez found Maria sitting alone on a bunker wall, staring out at the mountains where they had fought for their lives just hours earlier. The magnitude of what had happened was beginning to sink in as the adrenaline wore off and exhaustion took its place. "You know this is going to follow you for the rest of your career, right?" Rodriguez said as he sat down beside her. "Saving a SEAL team single-handedly isn't something that gets forgotten, especially when you're a woman in a combat arms unit." Maria nodded thoughtfully, understanding that the events of the day would indeed become part of her permanent military record and personal legacy. But her focus remained on the practical aspects of their successful mission rather than any potential recognition. "I hope it inspires other soldiers to be ready when their moment comes," she replied quietly. "Because you never know when you're going to be the one person who can make the difference between your teammates going home alive or becoming casualties." The return convoy to FOB Chapman departed the next morning with a different dynamic than their outward journey. Maria was now officially recognized as the convoy commander, and the team's confidence in her leadership had been proven under the most challenging circumstances possible. The journey back was uneventful, but every team member remained alert to potential threats while processing the lessons learned from their firefight. The enemy had demonstrated sophisticated capabilities, but they had also revealed weaknesses that could be exploited in future operations. When they reached FOB Chapman, word of their firefight had already spread throughout the base. Maria found herself the center of attention from soldiers who wanted to hear first-hand accounts of the battle. But she deflected most questions by emphasizing the team's collective performance rather than her individual actions. The formal debriefing took place the following day, with intelligence officers and senior commanders questioning every aspect of the mission and firefight. Maria's detailed recollection of events and tactical analysis provided valuable information for improving convoy security and counter-ambush procedures. 3 weeks later, Maria Santos stood at attention in the base commander's office. While Lieutenant Colonel Harris read the citation for the Silver Star, she was being awarded for her actions during the convoy ambush. Morrison, recovered from his injuries, stood with the rest of the SEAL team as witnesses to the ceremony. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an armed enemy, Harris read from the official citation. Staff Sergeant Santos displayed extraordinary courage and tactical skill while leading a convoy under heavy enemy fire, personally eliminating multiple enemy positions and enabling the successful extraction of critical personnel. The medal ceremony was attended by soldiers from throughout the base, many of whom had served multiple combat deployments, but recognized that they were witnessing recognition for truly exceptional heroism. Maria's actions had become legendary within the military community, inspiring countless others to maintain the highest standards of courage and professionalism. After the ceremony, Morrison approached Maria with words that would stay with her long after their deployment ended. "Santos, I've worked with the best warriors this country has ever produced, and what you did out there ranks among the most courageous acts I've ever witnessed. You didn't just save our lives. You showed every soldier watching that heroism comes in many forms." Maria's response was characteristically modest. "Chief, we all did our jobs that day. The medal is nice, but knowing that everyone made it home safe is all the recognition I need." 6 months later, Maria Santos returned to the United States and was assigned as an instructor at the Army's marksmanship training facility, where she would spend the remainder of her career teaching other soldiers the skills that had saved lives in the mountains of Afghanistan. Her story became part of military history, but more importantly, it became inspiration for future generations of warriors who would carry on the tradition of courage under fire. The convoy that was supposed to be routine had become a defining moment, not just for Maria Santos, but for everyone who heard the story of the soldier who stepped out of the shadows with her M4 rifle and reminded the world that heroes come in all forms, and that courage knows no boundaries when lives are on the line and duty calls.